It began with a family tragedy that rocked the entire world. The kind of story that seems too absurd to be true, yet it was. 23-year-old Alexandra Moore, the heiress to one of the world's largest fortune dynasties, vanished without a trace on a cold January night in 2016. Her disappearance was swift, leaving no clues behind, no ransom note, no phone calls, and no witnesses. Just a haunting silence and a trail of unanswered questions. The Moore family, known for their vast empire in the fashion industry, had always lived a life of luxury, power, and privacy. But no one could have imagined that the fall of this prominent family would begin with a single missing woman. The media flocked to the story like vultures, eager to uncover the truth, yet they quickly realized that there were more skeletons in the Moore family's closet than they could have ever anticipated. Days passed, turning into weeks, and the police were no closer to solving the mystery. The only thing they knew for certain was that Alexandra had attended a family gala the night of her disappearance. By all accounts, she had been in high spirits. But as the night drew to a close, something, or someone, had pulled her into a nightmare. The night of her disappearance, Alexandra had been spotted leaving the gala with a man none of the family or friends recognized. Security footage had captured the pair exiting the building, but that was the last trace of her. Her body was never found, and neither was her captor. The man in the footage seemed to vanish into thin air. Months passed, and the investigation seemed to lose momentum. The Moore family, desperate to protect their reputation, began hiring private investigators. They threw money at the case, but no one could seem to get any closer to the truth. It was almost as if Alexandra had simply evaporated from existence. The case became a media sensation, but the more the public dug, the more disturbing the story became. There were whispers, of course, the kind that always come when the story doesn't quite add up. People close to the Moore family began to speak out, some hinting at the darker undercurrents that ran beneath their gilded surface. It was rumored that Alexandra had been involved in a secret relationship with someone from outside the family, someone with a dangerous reputation. Others claimed that Alexandra had begun to question the family's business practices and had been planning to expose some of their most closely guarded secrets. Then, the bombshell hit. 2 months after Alexandra's disappearance, a video surfaced online. It was unmarked and uploaded to an anonymous account, but the footage sent chills down the spine of anyone who watched it. In the video, Alexandra appeared, but she wasn't alone. She was sitting in a dimly lit room, hands bound to a chair. Her eyes were wide with fear, but there was something else, a look of realization. She wasn't speaking, but her eyes were pleading for help. Behind her stood a tall figure, half in shadow, whose voice was muffled by a distortion filter. The video was short, only a minute long, but it was enough to send the world into a frenzy. The figure behind Alexandra spoke, their words cutting through the tension like a knife. She wanted to play with fire. Now, she'll burn with it. And just like that, the video ended. The authorities were quick to dismiss it as a hoax. But the video had been convincing, too convincing. Alexandra's family, who had initially thought she might have run away or staged her own disappearance, could no longer deny that something far more sinister was at play. Who would want to hurt her? And why? What they didn't know was that this wasn't just a random act of violence. Alexandra had been involved in something far deeper, something that no one could have predicted. Behind the family's glamorous facade, there had been a dark underbelly, one that stretched far beyond their wealth and power. This was no ordinary kidnapping. This was an orchestrated game of deception, and Alexandra had been the pawn. The truth was that Alexandra had been caught in a deadly web of family betrayal and corruption. She had stumbled upon something she wasn't supposed to, a secret that threatened to unravel everything. The Moore family's fortune was built on illegal dealings, shady investments, and backdoor agreements with dangerous organizations. The business empire they had built had been stained with blood. Alexandra had discovered this dark reality shortly before her disappearance. In the weeks leading up to her vanishing, she had begun questioning her family's role in these illicit operations. She'd confided in a close friend, someone who was also connected to the family's business dealings, about her fears. This person, who she trusted implicitly, had promised to help her. But the closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. What Alexandra didn't realize was that those she thought she could trust the most were the ones plotting her downfall. Her helpful friend was the very person responsible for her capture. Alexandra had become the ultimate threat to the family's legacy. She had the knowledge, the connections, and the drive to bring everything crashing down. In a family where betrayal was commonplace and money flowed like water, losing their most precious asset, the heir to the fortune, was unthinkable. But they underestimated her. As the video circulated, an unsettling realization began to take root. The Moore family wasn't just being targeted by an unknown force. They were being hunted by someone from within. The strange man who had taken Alexandra wasn't a random criminal. He was part of a much bigger game. The family had enemies, and the dangerous world they had created was closing in on them. The Moore family's dark secrets were becoming harder to hide. The people they had wronged, the deals they had made, and the illegal ventures they had financed were all slowly unraveling. Alexandra had uncovered more than just a few shady dealings. She had discovered the dark heart of the family's empire. And the moment she did, she became expendable. But it wasn't just her life at risk. In the weeks after the video surfaced, the authorities received a chilling tip. The mysterious person who had uploaded the footage had also sent a cryptic message. "You'll never find her until you face the truth." The police, now under pressure from both the public and the family, began digging deeper into Alexandra's life and the Moore family's business. But the deeper they went, the more dangerous things became. The family had money, power, and influence, and their enemies were no longer content with remaining in the shadows. As it turned out, the Moore family was entangled in a much larger web of corruption, one that stretched far beyond the borders of their fortune. What Alexandra had stumbled upon, and what the police were now chasing, was a network of criminal syndicates tied to international money laundering, arms dealing, and even human trafficking. This wasn't just a corporate scandal. This was a global conspiracy that could topple entire governments. The Moore family's fortune wasn't just the result of hard work. It had been built on blood, lies, and violence. And now, someone wanted to expose it. The person behind Alexandra's kidnapping was someone close, someone who knew every detail of her life and every skeleton in her family's closet. But who? As the investigation deepened, the police discovered that a series of high-profile individuals connected to the Moore family had also vanished over the years. Executives, lawyers, and even old business partners. They had all mysteriously disappeared, their disappearances written off as accidents, suicides, or simply forgotten. But now, with Alexandra missing and the truth beginning to surface, the pieces were falling into place. Alexandra's closest friend, Emily, who had been part of her inner circle, revealed a shocking detail. She claimed that in the months before her disappearance, Alexandra had been acting strangely. She'd become paranoid, always looking over her shoulder, convinced that someone was following her. Emily recalled a conversation they had just days before Alexandra vanished. Alexandra had said, "I've seen too much, Em. I think I've made a huge mistake. If anything happens to me, I need you to promise me that you'll take care of my family. Don't let them get away with it." It was clear now that Alexandra had known she was in danger. She had known that the people closest to her were involved in something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. But it wasn't just her family she had to fear. Her allies had turned into enemies, and the world she once knew had become a twisted maze of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Emily's revelation sent a shiver down everyone's spine. If Alexandra had known she was in danger, who else knew? And what was she about to uncover before she disappeared? The pressure on the Moore family reached a boiling point. The investigation was growing more intense, and the media frenzy surrounding the case wasn't helping. Behind closed doors, the Moore family scrambled to cover their tracks. They tried to bury the truth, but the more they suppressed, the more it seemed to rise to the surface. One morning, a mysterious package arrived at the police station. It contained a set of documents, heavily redacted, with some parts written in a foreign language, along with a single note. The heiress wasn't the only one they planned to sacrifice. The documents revealed the names of several powerful figures within the Moore family's network, as well as evidence of multiple high-stakes deals that were anything but legal. The family's empire was built on the exploitation of the weak and vulnerable. From arms deals in war-torn countries to under-the-table agreements with corrupt officials, the Moore family's grip on power had been maintained by dirty money and fear. And now, they had lost control. As Alexandra's whereabouts remained a mystery, the police began to suspect that her disappearance wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't just a kidnapping. It was part of a larger scheme to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to the family's empire. Alexandra had become a pawn in a deadly game, and those who had played her like one were now running scared. But there was one thing the Moore family hadn't counted on. Alexandra was still alive. The news came as a shock. A cryptic message was delivered to a local journalist who had been covering the case from the beginning. The message was simple: "I'm here, and I know everything." The journalist, who had already uncovered a mountain of evidence implicating the Moore family, rushed to meet the anonymous source. But when they arrived at the designated location, they found something far more chilling than they had anticipated. In a dark alley, under the flickering light of a single street lamp, stood Alexandra. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, and she was clutching a single file tightly in her hands. "I've seen too much," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They'll never stop. But now, it's my turn." Alexandra's return sent shockwaves through both the police department and the media. The heiress who had been presumed dead, lost in a world of secrets and lies, was now standing before them, carrying with her a dark truth that could bring down an empire. But her return came at a price. She was no longer the young, hopeful woman who had once walked among the rich and powerful. The person who stood in front of them was someone hardened by the darkness she had witnessed, someone determined to expose the corruption that had nearly destroyed her. When she spoke, her voice trembled, but her words were clear and forceful. "I have everything," she said, holding up the file she had clutched for so long. "Names, dates, locations, everything you need to take them down." The file contained damning evidence of the Moore family's dealings with corrupt politicians, shady business magnates, and ruthless criminals. It detailed arms shipments to war zones, illegal smuggling operations, and even the trafficking of young women for the pleasure of the powerful. And at the heart of it all was the Moore family, profiting from the misery of others. The deeper Alexandra had gone, the more she had uncovered, until she became a threat. But the file was only the beginning. Alexandra knew that even with all the evidence, the Moore family would stop at nothing to protect themselves. Their reach was vast, and they had allies in high places. The legal system, the police force, even entire governments, they had all been bought or manipulated. Alexandra realized that exposing the family would be dangerous, but it was the only way to free herself and stop the cycle of violence they had perpetuated. The police, now with undeniable evidence in their hands, began preparing for a series of arrests. But even as the investigation ramped up, Alexandra's anxiety grew. Every time she looked over her shoulder, she felt the weight of the eyes watching her, waiting for the moment when they could strike back. What Alexandra didn't know was that the family had already made plans for her. The moment she revealed herself, they had activated a network of hitmen and hackers ready to erase every trace of her. Days after Alexandra's reappearance, the first of many ominous signs appeared. She received a letter in the mail, a single sheet of paper with the words, "You are not safe. We'll find you." The handwriting was familiar, and the sender was someone Alexandra never thought would betray her, her own mother. The Moore family's influence had reached every corner of her life. They had controlled her every move, every decision. Now, they were warning her that stepping out of line would cost her more than just her inheritance. It could cost her life. But Alexandra wasn't backing down. She was determined to follow through, no matter the cost. She made contact with the journalist who had received her initial message, and together, they began preparing to go public with the story. The media, desperate for the truth, would be their megaphone. And yet, with each passing hour, the danger grew. The closer Alexandra came to exposing the family's secrets, the more determined they became to silence her. Could she trust anyone, or was she already living on borrowed time? In the middle of the night, the unthinkable happened. Alexandra disappeared again. This time, there were no cryptic messages, no clues left behind. It was as if she had been swallowed up by the earth itself. The police were frantic, but they knew this wasn't an ordinary disappearance. This wasn't just another kidnapping. Someone had planned this. Someone with power, and someone with an agenda. As the search intensified, the Moore family made their move. They used their resources to pull strings within law enforcement and media, ensuring that any investigation into Alexandra's disappearance would be obstructed. The case quickly became cold, and public interest waned. But those who had been following the story weren't fooled. They knew the truth was out there, buried beneath layers of lies and deception. Months passed, and the case went quiet. But then, a shocking development occurred. A whistleblower from inside the Moore family's organization came forward. They claimed to have information that could expose the entire criminal network, including the disappearance of Alexandra. But when the authorities tried to make contact, they found that the whistleblower had vanished, just like so many before them. It was becoming clear that the Moore family had created a web so complex and so tangled that no one could escape. Those who tried to speak out were either silenced or disappeared. Those who got too close to the truth paid the ultimate price. But there was still one hope left: Alexandra's file. It had been hidden, protected, and kept under lock and key. The question remained: could anyone use the information contained within it to bring down the Moore family? Or was Alexandra's fate sealed the moment she stepped into the light? The final clue came from an unlikely source. Someone close to the family had taken the risk to betray them. But was it too late to stop the inevitable? In the final hours of the investigation, a video surfaced online, a final message from Alexandra herself. In it, she spoke, her voice filled with fear and resolve. "I don't know if I'll make it out alive, but if you're hearing this, it means I've failed. The truth is out there. It's up to you to find it. I just hope you can stop them before it's too late." The video ended with a cryptic smile, one that hinted at the knowledge she had gained, but one that also spoke of her surrender. She knew the risks, and she had accepted them. The question now was whether anyone would be brave enough to finish what she had started, and whether the Moore family's empire of lies and corruption would ever be exposed for all to see.